I was a wife, until I wasn't. The ring still left a pale ghost around my finger, even after Jeb Crowley had tossed it into the dirt and told me I was no longer needed. A woman's body has one job, he'd said loud enough for the hired. Hands to hear. Yours can't even do that. I didn't cry. Not when he took my horse. Not when he remarried a wheat-thin girl barely 20. Not when I walked away from that ranch with only a satchel of mended linen and a pocket Bible I hadn't opened in 5 years. In Silver Rock, the wind carried the sound of doors closing before you reached the porch. Folks like me, cast-off women with no child and no coin, weren't welcome in polite company. I ate stale cornbread behind the church for 3 nights and swept the steps each morning, hoping decency would earn me a day's work. It didn't. Only stairs. That's when I saw it, pinned to the crooked wall of Dell's General. Help needed. Remote ranch. Widower with young'uns. Room and board. Quiet preferred. B. Harlan. I stood there a long time, fingers brushing the edge of that weather-worn note like it might vanish if I blinked. Folks had warned me about him. Bo Harlan. Lost his wife in the dead of winter. Buried her beneath an old cottonwood, and hadn't spoken a full sentence since. Said he kept to himself, raised his twins alone, and didn't take kindly to visitors. That suited me just fine. I wasn't looking for kindness, just space to breathe. The road to his place wasn't much more than a path of packed-down dust and shy wildflowers. I walked it anyway, boots splitting dry earth, and heart thudding with something between fear and hunger. Hunger for quiet, maybe. For a place where no one measured a woman by what she failed to carry. The house came into view just past a rusted gate, small, plain and square, built of worn cedar and crouched low against the prairie wind. A corral sat empty, save one chestnut mare dozing near the post. No children in sight, no sound but a hammer striking wood. He was out by the barn, sleeves rolled, hands weathered, driving nails into a new gate. He didn't look up right away. When he did, it was like someone opening a shutter halfway. Eyes dark as molasses, but with none of the sweetness. He said nothing, just nodded once, then went back to work. I waited. After a minute, he stopped, wiped his brow, and said, "You come for the posting?" I did. "You got a name?" "Clara. Clara May Dobson." Another pause. "You cook?" "Well enough." "Sleep on a cot?" "Done worse." He nodded again and jerked his chin toward the house. "Bunkhouse out back. Kids wake early. Breakfast by sunup." That was it. No questions. No prying into why a woman like me would leave town alone or what stain I carried on my name. Just space. Blessed, merciful space. That first night I lay on a straw-stuffed mattress in a room that smelled of pine and thyme. I could hear the wind crawl across the roof, the creak of old timber settling into silence. I hadn't felt safe in years, but something about that stillness. It didn't judge. It didn't ask. The next morning I met the children, Edda and Jude. They came into the kitchen barefoot, the girl holding a ragged doll by one arm, the boy clutching a stick carved like a horse. Both had their father's dark eyes, but none of his sharpness. Edda climbed onto a stool without a word, nose twitching at the smell of fried potatoes and eggs. Jude hovered by the door. "You can sit," I said softly. He didn't move until his sister whispered something, then shuffled forward like he expected the floor to vanish beneath him. I set their plates down gently. Edda smiled. Jude didn't. But he ate. Bo came in last, hat in hand, nodding once like that was his whole vocabulary. He sat at the far end, watching. Not me, exactly. More like the space I occupied. I didn't take offense. I'd grown used to being observed like a mule. Someone wasn't sure would bolt. After breakfast, I washed dishes while the twins fed the hens. Bo said nothing, just handed me a list scribbled in firm block letters. Tack repairs, fence mending, some canning if the peaches held up. I tucked it in my apron and got to work. Days fell into a rhythm. I spoke little, Bo even less. The children watched me with eyes too old for their faces. Grief does that. Carves lines where laughter should live. I knew the feeling. It took time to undo it. Edda gave me a drawing one afternoon, a picture of the house with 4 stick figures. One was taller, wearing a dress. She pointed to it and said, "You." I smiled. Jude peeked from behind the doorframe. He didn't speak, but he didn't run either. That was progress. Bo caught me humming once while hanging sheets. He stopped, mid-step, eyes resting on me for a breath longer than usual. "You sing," he said. "Only when I forget not to." He nodded again, then walked off. But the next day there was a guitar leaning against the porch wall. Strings dusty, wood, worn smooth. He never mentioned it. I began to feel something strange in my chest, like a door easing open in slow, stubborn inches. Not joy, not yet. But the quiet here wasn't heavy like it had been in Silver Rock. It was a kind quiet, the kind that held space for a person to grow into. That evening, I stood by the fence as the sky turned syrupy with sunset. The twins chased fireflies near the barn. Bo leaned against the gate, arms crossed. "You fix more than fences," he said. I looked at him. "I'm not sure I fix anything. You're still here." It didn't sound like praise, more like fact, but something in it settled the ache in my chest. He turned to go, but paused. "I don't ask about your past," he said. "Don't plan to. I appreciate that. I don't offer promises either. I'm not here for promises." He looked at me then, really looked. "Then maybe this'll work." He left without waiting for an answer. And just like that, I knew. I'd stepped out of a life that had no room for me and into one that might, one day, let me belong. The morning after the rain, the world looked scrubbed clean, grass brighter, the air laced with petrichor. Even the chickens seemed livelier, pecking about like they'd forgotten the drought. I cracked the door to the main house and found Bo, already at the stove, flipping flapjacks with a quiet rhythm. The man moved like dawn, unassuming, slow to show his warmth, but when he did, you felt it down to the bone. "Coffee's hot," he said without turning. I poured 2 mugs and slid into the chair across from where Jude sat, shoulders drawn up like he was expecting thunder. His fork hovered mid-air. "You all right, Jude?" I asked gently. He didn't answer, just stared at the far wall. Edda slid into the seat beside him, feet swinging. "Ma used to sing when it rained," she said. Bo stiffened just slightly. "She liked the sky," he murmured. "She said rain was heaven's way of remembering," Edda added, "that it fell for those we forgot." I set my mug down. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's how the sky says, "You still matter." Jude's fork clinked against the plate as he finally took a bite. That day, I followed Bo out to the north pasture. A few boards in the fence had buckled in the storm, and while he measured for replacements, I handed him nails, my fingers brushing his in ways too small to mean anything, except they did. He glanced at me once, expression unreadable. "You've done this work before." "Work's easier than people," he gave a half smile. "Ain't that the truth?" We fell into rhythm, wood and hammer, silence and breath. After a while, he said, "Jude's been waking at night. Calls out for her." I looked toward the house. "Do you sit with him?" "Sometimes. He don't let me hold him." Boys like Jude, quiet ones with bruises you can't see, they need time. But they also need someone who stays put. Bo nodded, gaze heavy with wear. Staying's hard. When you love someone, and they go, the part of you that stayed with them goes too. I understood that more than I wanted to admit. I'd buried my worth in a marriage where silence was punishment, and my body was a ledger of debts unpaid. And when I left, I didn't just lose a husband. I lost the woman I thought I was supposed to be. That night, I made a pot of stew and sang softly while the onions browned, a hymn my mother used to hum before she got sick. The kind of tune that made you feel less alone, even when nobody was around. Jude came to the kitchen doorway, bare feet, small fists rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Was that her song?" he asked. I turned slowly. It was mine. But maybe she knew it too. He stepped forward. I remember her voice more than her face. That's all right. Voices stay longer. He stood there a moment longer before he slipped onto the bench beside the stove. Not close enough to touch, but closer than he'd ever dared. I handed him a spoonful of stew and said nothing more. A few days passed. The children began to laugh again, small giggles at breakfast, full laughter while chasing each other between the peach trees. It changed the house, gave it breath. I started hanging sheets in the sun, humming again without apology. Then came the letter. Bo found it tucked into the gate, no envelope, just a single folded page. His name scrawled on the front. He opened it there by the porch while I shelled. Peas in the shade. His brow furrowed deeper with each line. When he looked up, his face was hard, shuttered. "What is it?" I asked. "Her folks," he said. "They want the children." The bowl of peas tipped from my lap and scattered across the planks. "What?" "Said they were letting me grieve. But it's time. Said their family. But they didn't come when she died. They didn't even write." He stared, down at the letter. "They've money, influence. They could fight for them. You think they'd win?" He didn't answer. That night, the children sensed it. Jude sat stiff at dinner. Etta wouldn't eat. When I tucked her in, she whispered, "You won't let them take us, will you?" I smoothed her hair back. Not without a storm big enough to shake the whole sky. Later, Bo stood at the edge of the porch, eyes locked on the stars. I joined him, wrapped in a shawl, heart beating like a war drum. "They're mine, Clara. But not by blood, not by law. Just by the days we've stacked together, the silence we share. That's all I've got." "Sometimes," I said, "that's the truest kind of claim. Not written in ink, written in presence." He looked at me then, eyes dark but no longer closed. "I want to fight. But I don't know if I'm enough. You're not alone." The wind picked up, rustling the dry grass in whispers. He turned and for the first time reached for my hand. "Then I'll fight with everything I've got." And for the first time, I believed that maybe I'd been given this second chance not to save myself, but to help save a family already. Half healed, the storm was coming, but so were we. The day the Harrows arrived, the wind blew east, away from our home, as if even the earth knew we weren't ready to let go. Bo stood by the corral, his coat sharp against the dust, hat tilted low. I'd never seen him shave. Not since I came. But that morning his jaw was clean. He looked like a man going to war with no armor but his steadiness. Jude and Etta clung close to the porch, each holding the other's hand. I stayed behind them, one palm pressed to Etta's back. My body trembled, but my heart stood still. The carriage pulled up like it had no business in the dirt, polished black, horses bred for parades, not pasture. Out stepped Mr. Harrow first, thin, white-haired, with a cane too fine for real use. Then his wife, mouth drawn in disapproval before she'd even seen the house. Their eyes fell on the children first, then on Bo, and then on me. "Mr. Harlan," Mr. Harrow said, "we appreciate your stewardship." Bo didn't shake the man's hand. "They've got food, a roof, and peace. That's more than you gave him when your daughter died. Mrs. Harrow stiffened. We were in mourning. So were they. Jude flinched when she took a step forward. Etta backed into me. I steadied them both. We intend to take them to St. Louis, she said. There are schools, tutors, a future. They've got one here, Bo said, and they've already lost enough. It's not up to you, Mr. Harrow said coldly. You were never husband to our daughter. You're no blood. That word hung in the air like smoke. Blood. Bo didn't flinch. No, but I was their father the night she died. I've been him every day since. Mrs. Harrow looked to me. And who is this woman? Some stray he took in? I stepped forward before Bo could speak. My name's Clara Dobson. I've held those children while they cried for a mother they barely remember. I've taught them songs to sleep by, how to find kindness in a quiet world. You may have claim to their name, but we have claim to their hearts. Mr. Harrow pulled a paper from his coat. We've filed for custody. A judge will decide. But we came to offer you the decent choice. Let them come now, peacefully. Bo took the paper, glanced at it, then folded it without reading. You'll have to drag them from this land, and you'll have to get through me to do it. It didn't come to blows, but something shifted that day, something final. They left in a gust of righteous fury, promising courts and lawyers and signatures. We didn't speak much that night. Bo sat in the dark, oil lamp flickering, the letter between us like a splinter too deep to dig out. I can't read court. Papers, he finally said. I can, I replied, and I'll learn the rest. He looked up then. I didn't ask you to fight. You didn't have to. This is my family, too. For the first time, I saw him blink fast, like something burned behind his eyes. Weeks passed in waiting. Letters came. We answered them. A lawyer from the next town, an old friend of Bo's, offered to help, said it'd be an uphill battle, no marriage, no blood, no formal guardianship. But he saw how Jude reached for Bo's hand in public. How Etta fell asleep in my lap during the meeting. We'll tell the judge everything, the lawyer said. Not just facts, truth. The hearing took place in a small courthouse 2 counties over. Oak benches, a judge with tired eyes and no patience for theatrics. The Harrows came dressed in mourning black, faces solemn as saints. They spoke of education, inheritance, the proper shape of legacy. Bo spoke next. He didn't use fancy words, just told the truth. How Jude wouldn't eat for weeks after their mother died. How Etta stopped talking for days. How they'd built a new rhythm on land soaked with memory. Then it was my turn. My voice shook, but I spoke anyway. About the nights Etta called out for someone to hum her to sleep. About how Jude finally let me hug him after I sat beside him every night for a month without saying a word. They don't need rescuing, I said. They need roots. The judge didn't decide that day. He said he needed time. The Harrows left in silence. Back at the ranch, nothing felt certain. The days were longer, nights quieter. Even the horses seemed uneasy. Then, 2 weeks later, a letter came, thick seal, the judge's stamp. Bo read it aloud on the porch while we all held our breath. Custody granted. His hands trembled. Etta began to cry. Jude just walked over and wrapped his arms around Bo's waist, tight as he could. I didn't cry, not then, but when Bo turned to me and said, "You gave them back their mother," I broke. "No," I whispered, voice thin with awe. "We gave each other what we needed." That night, we ate peach pie on the porch under stars that felt brighter somehow. Bo sat beside me, fingers laced with mine, while Jude leaned against his shoulder and Etta hummed a lullaby. I didn't need a child of my own to feel full anymore. And maybe Bo never meant to fall in love with the woman fate blew into his life. But love had its own weather, quiet, healing, and true.
Beau Harlan didn't speak unless the wind demanded it. He moved like a man used to carrying grief in his spine, every step deliberate, every glance cautious. The ranch breathed with his silence, a quiet so full it nearly had weight. I learned that first week how to read the things he wouldn't say. A half-second pause meant yes. A blink too long meant no. When he rubbed the back of his neck, it meant he was thinking something too big for words. We worked side by side but rarely spoke. I fixed fence posts while he set traps along the creek. I brought in jars from the root cellar. He stacked firewood without asking. We moved like parts of the same old machine, rusted, reliable, reluctant to change. Still, in that stillness, I found a kind of ease I'd never known. No judgment, no questions. Just the rhythm of the land, and two people too tired to pretend at anything more. The children watched us from windows and doorframes. Etta, more than Jude. She was a quiet blossom, slow to open, curious in her own soft way. One afternoon I found her sitting on the bunkhouse steps with my needlework in her lap, tracing the thread with a tiny finger. You like to sew? I asked. She looked up, eyes wide. Mama did. Her voice was the hush of a creek under ice there, but barely. I sat beside her without a word and handed her a small hoop and scrap muslin. We didn't talk, just stitched. That became our thing. Jude was harder. He followed his father like a shadow, all wary eyes and clenched fists. The boy never cried, never smiled, just watched, like he was waiting for something terrible to come around the bend. I knew that look. I'd worn it for years, in a house where love was currency I never earned. It was the little things that started changing. Beau came in one evening with a gash on his palm, a jagged red mark from a rusted nail. He sat at the table, wordless, until I knelt beside him with a bowl of warm water and a strip of linen. Could get infected. I said. He didn't flinch as I cleaned it, didn't meet my eyes. Only when I wrapped the bandage tight did he mutter. Didn't mean to scare Jude. I paused, fingers still on his wrist. Did you? No, but he sees blood. He remembers her. There, it was her. The wife. He didn't say her name. I didn't ask for it, but the silence that followed wasn't sharp this time. It was soft, weighted with something fragile. I finished the bandage and sat back. You're good with wounds, he said quietly. I've had plenty of practice. The next morning, I found a bouquet of wild chamomile and sage set on the bunkhouse step. No note, just color and scent. Healing things. Beau was by the fence when I looked up. He tipped his hat but didn't smile. That wasn't his way, but I smiled for both of us. Each day brought some small shift. Jude, let me read to him before bed. A page, no more. Etta began humming while she stitched. Beau started leaving his coffee cup near mine. Like maybe we were sharing something more than chores. And then came the visit. We heard the wagon before we saw its iron rims rattling against hard earth hooves, kicking dust high into the morning sun. Ida froze on the porch steps. Jude backed toward the barn. Beau stepped forward, jaw tight. It was the preacher's wife, Miss Agnes Lott, and she brought the weight of judgment with her. Hat pinned sharp to her head, dressed too bright for the dusty world around it. I heard you hired help. Mr. Harlan, she said, voice like sugar and vinegar. Beau said nothing. Her eyes landed on me. Miss Dobson, or is it still Mrs. Crowley? I kept my chin level. I don't go by his name no more. Well, I suppose every vessel has a purpose, even if it's cracked. Beau shifted then, not much, but enough. That'll be all. Miss Lott, he said, voice low and steady. She sniffed, took in the house, the children, the fence line. They say it's dangerous to let broken people raise the young. Beau stepped closer, and it's dangerous to talk like that on my land. She blinked, hesitated, then climbed back in her wagon without another word. The wheels turned fast. On the way out, and I watched the dust trail disappear, with something like relief in my chest. That night, the air held the scent of coming rain. I sat on the porch, watching lightning flicker at the horizon. Beau joined me, slow and quiet. You don't have to stay, he said finally. Not after what she said. I turned to him. Do you believe her? No, then I stay. He nodded. Good. A pause stretched between us, thick with unsaid things. I didn't marry her because she could bear children, he said. I married her because, when she smiled, I wanted to be better. I loved her. And now, I asked, though my voice nearly caught. He didn't look at me. It just whispered. Now I don't know what I'm allowed to feel. The rain came in then soft at first, tapping the porch roof like a lullaby. I reached out and placed my hand gently over his. He didn't pull away. We sat that way for a long while, to people who'd lost more than they could name, finding something like comfort in the sound of rain, and for the first time in years, I felt the ache of possibility.